In this section, we are going to be taking a look at what's generally referred to as the business cycle. So we are looking at economic fluctuations. If you take a look at this chart, you can see the growth trend. This is the slow increase in the overall goods and services produced in an economy, but on the short run, you have the up and down movements. In other words, what we refer to as fluctuations. And you can see that you have a maximum, which is known as the peak or the boom, the lowest point, which is known as the trough. Don't ask me why they chose to call it like that. And the downward section, it's known as contraction, the upward, which is expansion. So you have four main sections. You have the peak, you have contraction, you have the trough, and you have the expansion. And contraction is generally known as recession. So policies to fight contraction are known as expansionary policies, and policies to stop the economy over expanding are known as contractionary policies. We will see that when we take a look at macroeconomic policies, in other words, fiscal and monetary policies. Now let's rapidly take a look at this. We want to answer certain questions. What do we mean by short-term economic fluctuations? What are the four phases of a business cycle? This is just the business cycle. How long does a business cycle last? We've just seen that the four phases of the business cycle, you have the peak, contraction or recession, the trough, expansion, and the peak. Now in Canada and most other nations, there has been long-term economic growth. So this is what we are talking about. It's going up. You have hardly come across a situation where it's going down in the long run. Now, when we talk of the business cycle, it's simply short-term fluctuations in the economy relative to the long-term trend in output. We are talking of output. If you take a look, we are looking at real GDP per year. So GDP is simply the market value of all final goods and services. In other words, it's the output per year. Let me not give a very technical definition. It's the output per year. So that's what we are talking about. It's real because we've taken off the effect of inflation. So it's the fluctuations relative to the long-term trend in output. So in the long run, there is increasing output, but in the short run, there are downward and upward changes. So this is what we are talking about. Long run, short run, you have upward, downward, upward, downward. This is what is known as the business cycle. Now, when we talk of expansion, we are looking at a situation where real GDP is rising significantly, and the period between it rising significantly and it going down is the trough, and so on and so forth. Now, what characterizes goods and services increasing? If you are producing more goods and services, generally you need to employ more people to produce it, so unemployment rate is falling. Now, if you are producing less goods and services, it generally means you need to lay off people, so unemployment rate is increasing. Now, when people have jobs, they want to buy more goods and services, so it generally results in inflation. When people are losing their jobs, it generally results in a fall in the cost of living. So both consumer and business confidence are high during expansion. Consumers buy, they are confident that they will keep having a good job. Businesses are confident they will keep making money. So during this part, it's high. During this part, it's pretty low. Business investment and consumer spending are also rising here. Here it's falling. So that's what characterizes those phases. So the peak, we are simply talking of the point in time when the expansion comes to an end, and it's the highest point in the cycle, while the trough is the lowest point in the cycle. So contraction is simply when the economy's output is falling. And of course, it's characterized by the spending on investment and durable goods falls sharply. So when we talk of a recession, generally we are talking of output falling for at least 2 consecutive quarters. When we talk of 2 quarters, we are talking of 6 months. Okay, so there's a decline in output or goods and services produced. Employment rate is also falling. In other words, unemployment is increasing, and we are talking of at least 6 months of that. Okay, we've already talked of what is the trough, and here's your diagram, blah blah blah. So there's no uniformity to the business cycle. The diagrams look uniform, but in real life, at times expansions are longer than contractions. This can be a year, 2 or 3 years at most of the time. However, here you can have 10, 12, 15 years. So it's really not uniform. A depression is a very severe recession, and a boom is simply a period of prolonged expansion. Now, some economic activity fluctuations reflect seasonal pattern. That's generally not an issue. So business activity tend to be high in the 2 months before winter holidays and lower in the summer due to family vacation, and that's just fine. Now, how long does a business cycle generally last? Businesses and government agencies rely on economic forecasts, in other words, trying to predict the business cycle, which is pretty difficult because, economists gather statistics on the economic activity and past historical relationships, and they try to predict it. It's generally not accurate, but it's helpful in planning. You get some numbers which help you plan, but it's not exactly accurate. However, you can know that it's coming without knowing exactly when it's going to happen. We'll talk more about this in class. So we have what is known as leading economic indicators. So these are indicators that show signs that something is coming. For example, if you simply find that the interest rates have gone up, you know that it's a matter of time for it to be too expensive for people to keep buying houses. If interest rates go to maybe 10%, you know it's a matter of time for people to go bankrupt because they can't pay their mortgages. You just see that happening. On the other hand, if you see that the unemployment rate is falling, you know it's a matter of time for people to start buying a lot of goods and services. And if they keep buying, you know it's a matter of time for things to become expensive. So that's inflation. And it's a matter of time for the government to try to do something about inflation. So leading economic indicators are factors that typically change before changes in economic activity occur. So it's there as a warning sign. So it provides warning of a likely downturn, but not its depth or duration. It's just an indicator. And Statistics Canada has identified 10 of such indicators. Housing stats is one of them. Here you have the other ones. So have fun with them, and I think that is it for this lecture.